Becky, if you're gonna
Sit here. Do we need a chair below up front?
yeah.
Okay.
This is a mic here.
Oh, is that a mic?
Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't matter to me.
You always tables?
I don't think we need a table as much as a chair.
Use this one for my arm. You got
We only had one.
You're gonna talk one.
I think I got one today.
Oh, yeah. Look at your arm rest.
Yeah, you can keep your arm rest.
Now, if there's no sound on this, they're gonna think you were trying to throw a chair at us.
Yeah, right.
Negotiation can't do it.
Yeah.
It's about time.
Gotta go with a whole new couple position, like something new. Alright.
It has the world's largest water bottle.
Oh.
It's huge.
Like how the video on the screen is about 1 second later than what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You see yourself, look at
I
yourself.
did. Man, we got full house today.
You dressed up, Bob.
Guess we have a meeting to call right now. You are setting the call.
Me on my toes there.
I'm calling you. I sure am. Phone is so intuitive.
Yeah.
Funny thing, I was calling that back up right before that, I hung up on him and pulled you up for somewhere else. Oh, there's Sarah, she's back. We had a visit close to the bathroom, we do good start without us.
Yes.
Took the pressure off both sides. What, how do y'all wanna start today?
You have anything of priority? If not, we have 16 and 17, I think we're gonna start with, right?
We got, yeah, we got, kind of the, what do you call, management rights bundle, we're ready to return.
Good.
And, we are ready to do a wage proposal, if y'all are ready for us to do it.
You bet.
And, we used to do the daily thing, we kind of go through the rundown of where we stand, we'd like to do that, so. Is that
So
something
you wanna
like to
start
do?
with, you wanna start with that?
Yeah, I don't have a daily thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
A daily
I got
thing?
here really late today, so.
Yeah, she had a flight problem and just got in, and so we're up to speed on what we need to talk about first, but this would be good.
Okay, good deal. We haven't been too far off on these.
Yeah, yeah. Your clouds still look good.
Okay, so I think that's right, we're on day 12. And these are the tentative agreements so far. On the management side, this is what we show. I think dues is really close, I think it was really close last time, so we're just kind of keeping it on there. And you said you had 16 and 17 today?
I do.
Okay, good. And I showed what
We
you
may have
said.
some others, we have several other articles that are close, but we're ready on 16 and 17.
Okay,
And we will have a number later today.
I just want to confirm, I believe this is true, I think civilian employees are still on your side of the table, is that?
It is.
Okay,
We were working on it, but it'll be later today.
right. We have management rights, civil service, drug testing. And, you know, let me just say this about drug testing really quick. We thought we heard at the table last time, and we kind of kept on our side of the table if there was a second chance agreement or something. And I didn't find that in what I think was y'all's latest almost agreement with EMS. And I talked to Selena, she said that doesn't exist. So I'm just gonna send it over to y'all this time, today, and just to kind of get some progression on it. If you guys know of something I'm missing, I'm all ears, but I can't figure out what it is, so,
We'll talk about it internally.
thank you. We'll be proposing wages today. Wellness, I hope to have that proposed next session. And then we holding off on definitions, so there's that. So before we go through wages, I guess let's go through the others. Management rights, I would imagine it's going to spur some conversation. So, if I'm not mistaken, we were only down to this part here. You guys can see that fine. On work schedules. And we had a long discussion about what management rights means, as opposed to management standards, as opposed to entire agreement. And I think both sides committed to clarity. And we're hoping this meets our interest, but I doubt it will. I bet it takes a few more discussions back and forth. But it occurred to me, we're trying to make good faith effort here. I know you all are too. But it occurred to me, of course, management would like to have the purview through management rights to do whatever they want. Of course, we'd like to be able to weigh in on all those things. So what we're trying to do is find a happy medium. And so on work, and we never really believed that work schedules in this area meant to establish, eliminate, or modify. We thought they could establish them or determine them. And then, if it wasn't a past practice, it's something we could negotiate. We've never tried to do that before, but we signal that is something we'd like to do in the future. And so I think then the arbitrator, and you all maybe can help me on this, if you believe at least in spirit of what we're trying to do here, can tell if it's a minor modification or not. We certainly don't want to take management's, we don't want to tie their hands on things that would be for utility or for situational things that need to be done in terms of change of work schedules. But a major change in work schedule that really has a big effect on the employee, we think that should be negotiated. That's what we're trying to accomplish here, if that makes sense. And am I correct that this was the only change?
Appreciate that explanation.
Yeah. And I think this was the only change you all maybe sent back on our side table was that the part surrounding work schedules. That
I'll have to clarify.
yeah, I think I see Sarah.
So fair
Yeah, you
question.
may be nodding, but yeah. But please officially let me know. That'd be great.
Yeah, that's my recollection as well. We were down to that, right? Okay, yeah.
Which is great. It means we made a lot of progress, which should be also revered. Civil service, I asked you this question, Lowell, if it would get us closer, and you said, kind of informally, you thought it would, so I hope it does. I highlighted yellow because there's so many back and forths.
We talked about that. I don't have an official response, but as I indicated, I think during the joint meeting, that's progress. That's what we're looking for.
And I think
we understand the role of those lawyers, even though they both are city lawyers, they have two totally different roles.
yes. And I think we're really close to it. I think that all this back and forth has been helpful, I think, at least our side, so we appreciate that. Ability to do that, so we'll send that over to you. Drug testing, I'll just send over, I would explain that one, I'm not sure. I'm probably missing something, let's just say I'm missing something, but you guys can tell me what it is. Entire agreement, you didn't make any changes last time, that's why I'm not putting a response here from us. I can if you want me to, just for the trail. But you sent this back over with our language unstruck, with a footnote, talk to Matt further, Matt had reviewed the tapes, when we had that pretty extensive discussion on, entire agreement and all the different articles that kind of work together. And he said that, anything he would have said was covered in that agreement. If you have something specifically you'd like him to address, he'd be happy to do that. He felt like it was discussed thoroughly and accurately from his description. From his point of view. Maintenance standards, we left it exactly, that's why I didn't change the notation on what side of the table it was on. We didn't make a change, I'm happy to put it in there just for history if you want me to. You know, I think, Lowell, you said that you didn't think this was a concession and that we both agree, and we would rather have it not in there. We believe it's a concession. We're happy to leave it in there as part of this bundle. And it just kind of.
That one's ready to go forward with your approval as a part of the bundle.
Yes, yep. And of course, the computer is doing weird stuff. Let me see if I can get this last one. And it closed down. So I think the last one you can pull up now is termination agreement. Give me just a second. There it is. Just ignore all the other information on the screen. Probably not useful to anybody. This one, Matt and I spent a lot of time on this. First of all, we put in, so that nobody loses track of this, 2025. It seems like you all are trying to do a 4-year agreement. We would really rather be 2 or 3, so we're suggesting 3. I understand there's gonna be some back and forth on that, but we're down to a little over 2 weeks now, so I figured we better start discussing that soon. We're open to that discussion. And here's what we did. I'm gonna go ahead and put it on the view where we can just see without all the changes, if that's okay. I think it'd probably be easier. And everything that we change is right in here. And, you know, I think there's still a couple ways to get there. And I think we will get there. So I know you didn't want anything to do with interest arbitration in there, but we ran out of options. We put in dispute resolution procedure. That could be mediation, right? It could be other things. But if the parties engage in negotiations and, I should say and, excuse me. I shouldn't say that. And dispute resolution procedures for a such agreement, at the time the agreement expires, the agreement will remain in effect during the period in which the parties are engaged in negotiations and or dispute resolution procedures for an accessory agreement not to exceed a total of 1 year. Becky, you may consider this a little bit wordy, so. Yeah. The city and association negotiating team do have the right to mutually agree to extend the agreement past the 1 year period. I thought we were close to that discussion at the table, but I'm sure you all will take a look at it. Let me know.
We'll let you know that.
Okay. My blame is all on that guest kind of count in the city. Sometimes the internet's very slow for some reason. Okay, so
I
now,
assume it just has to do with user traffic. It's really bizarre. Wi-Fi things at my house, you know, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. No logic. You know, the wind blows, it doesn't work.
we'll all be in Skylink someday, so we'll be happy or even more sad. Anyway, so the wage proposal. I somewhat built off the conceptual, but I'm hoping to not go through all of that in the detail I did before. Okay, so I think we can all acknowledge or to some level, to some degree, that we do have a new economic normal in Austin right now. Fastest growing city, over 400,000. All these things are still the same this last time. Austin become one of the least affordable cities in the nation. National papers like New York Times reporting on that in recent articles. Fastest growing cost of housing, not just in Texas, but in Texas for sure, nationally is very high. Best job market in the nation for the last 10 years, which puts a lot of upward pressure on choices for workers to go to other jobs. And also creates a hot cost of living environment. And we dropped out of the top 10 city. We were there number 1 for several years recently. And the reason we read the article is affordability, particularly housing. So it's definitely a new, we're in a 40-year high on cost of living. And I grew up in that last high in the mid-70s. It was no fun, very different. And it has a huge impact. And I think this is the thing I'm gonna try to stress more and more while we give this presentation is, when you're talking about numbers, statistics, I think we lose the illustration of what this is really about. It's impact on people's lives, it's impact on the families of our firefighters, it's impact on them being able to plan their lives, plan their education, plan their next moves if they have to, if they have a growing family. It's, and like I said before, this is my 7th bargaining cycle. We do very similar questions every time, and I've never seen the sort of result I had in my surveys as far as people really expressing that they feel like they've lost purchasing power, that it's been a detriment to their family, what's happened the last 5 years to them. And so we've taken it very seriously. We expressed that to you as our priorities early on in this negotiation. I think we expressed it in the conceptual we did about a month ago. So the full presentation, so I'm not gonna go through a lot of the same things, was if you go back to our portfolio videos, it's on 6/3 at 5209 time mark here. Anybody needs it, I'm happy to send them that. But there's a couple, this was all recent articles, fastest growing city in the nation. You can see a picture of Austin. New York Times, least affordable cities in America, Austin. Recent article, I think it was last year, December last year. Best housing markets are the biggest cities. The band at the top is Austin. Last 10 years, it's been one of the hottest labor markets in the nation, which of course has a tremendous upward effect on all different types of costs. Not only cost of goods, but driving up cost of salaries. Used to be one of the best cities in the nation in terms of livability. That's not anymore. When you read the article, it's because of these costs. And I don't think this surprises any of us. What do we do about it, right? So high rents, high cost of living, higher wage earning potential in Austin, higher pricing, and relatively low starting wages makes it very difficult to get highly qualified people. I don't know if I expressed it at the table. I met the new president from San Antonio recently, a couple Fridays ago, and I was asking about the hiring process. They usually have, several thousand people, 3,000, sometimes even more than that apply. This last time he said they had 600 people. They're having the same sort of situation where you have these lower starting wages and firefighters are making choices. And I really hope we can look at this as shared interest, because I think it is. And I think if we don't do something now and show a little bit of foresight on this particular problem, we're going to be experiencing huge problems in a few years, maybe even as early as next hiring process. So I hope everybody can work on that. I think forbearing situation to make sure we can do something to correct it. And for the first time in my career, higher wages in Austin, loss of firefighter purchasing power, again, a detriment to their families, is tempting firefighters to leave and resign with other departments, other careers. I've never seen that in my career. We're seeing that trend occurring at a more frequent rate now. And I think it's the beginning. And all the reasons, all these economic pressures certainly indicate why that would occur. And so, again, I think it's really easy to lose track of what this all means, the detriment to our families. Firefighter compensation allows firefighters to provide homes, safe education, plan for their lives. And we've lost significant purchasing power over the last 5 years. It's challenging enough to raise a family with civil service wages, but the current environment is becoming untenable. And and I'm hearing that very loudly from my members for the first time, really in my 12-year tenure as president. And this is the graph we're using. We've seen it before. It shows our CPI cumulative in April against our general wage increases and this cumulative loss of purchasing power. And clearly, we're looking at a 6-year window here, right? So it's not a 1-year window. We're looking at a 6-year window where this purchasing power loss has occurred. And a lot of it happened the last couple of years. So, you know, I think everybody's familiar with these type of quotes, statistics. You know, there's 3 types of lies, right? Lies, damn lies, and statistics. But the good news is, and this is where I hope we end up, and I hope we invite y'all to do this. It's easy to lie with statistics. It's easier to lie without them. And there are standards for statistics that get us very much closer to a realistic picture instead of, you know, cherry pick sort of statistics that where each side is doing whatever they can to make their case rather than trying to illustrate the situation accurately. So, you know, I think we'll all be challenged to do that, but I think it's absolutely important if we're going to get to a meeting of the minds at the table that we endeavor to do that on both sides. So there's actually names for this sort of thing: results-oriented versus rational approaches to comparables. And results-oriented comparables are data is not properly justified, rather selected to achieve the result the desired group is presenting. It's really common. I mean, it's really common to the point where people don't even know they're doing it. You know, when you start looking at different sort of books, like negotiating books, they talk about these various bias and you know, they study these sort of things. And, you know, salespeople say, I wouldn't sell this product to you unless I believed it was the best. And the results show they actually believe it's the best a lot of times, but it's not. You know, so the sort of bias that achieve this sort of thing are very prevalent. And what I'm suggesting is we're going to get a beat in the minds. We need to try to counter that to the extent we can. And of course, the other type of comparables, more irrational approach to comparable, where data is collected and obtained on accurate portrayal of the presentation. All variables are justified. I think justified is the key word there. And we can clearly always take cherry pick a statistic or a jurisdiction, whatever, and get the result we want. But the challenge is to do it in a way that's as even-handed and accurate as possible. So examples of results are maybe not including total compensation when making large comparisons, just looking at base pay or just a particular element, but not all of them put together. Not making proper adjustments to jurisdictions or using index that are known with flaws or inaccuracies. And you know, we can argue those, but I mean, that would be an example, generalized example. Not looking at the full range of the pay scale for making comparisons, but just looking at parts of the pay scale perhaps. And so this is the reason this is a different color. This is the presentation we made in 2017 when y'all wanted to index. Remember we took about a 3-week hiatus to our own sort of research on the indexing system. And what we found is that Austin's base wages makes up a higher percentage of any of the other selected cities. And but the other selected cities were getting other compensation in a variety of other ways. So it wasn't a very fair comparison. We felt after doing that analysis to only look at base wage. And here's a good example. You know, we're relatively high in you could say longevity, but San Antonio's 9,000 higher, you know, close to 9,000 higher. That wasn't captured in total compensation when we were looking at indexing. It's clearly a significant factor. And when you look at the total compensation does not come from base wage longevity. Austin does have some. It's lower in the spec, about 23%. But cities like Dallas have 49% of their total compensation does not come from base longevity. So it's a significant portion that should be accounted for if you're trying to do a rational approach to comparables in our estimation.
Let me ask just a quick question.
Sure.
In this particular comparison,
Remember this from 17.
I understand, but when you say total compensation, I believe that you're talking about the listed components of compensation and not the paycheck compensation. So You're not talking about an individual's overtime earnings or those kinds of things?
In this slide I am, but other slides, I think that should be discussed.
Okay.
You know. And I'll give you, for instance, real quick. So I think this may be where you're going. So, like, let's say you're looking at the salary of somebody. Well, you could adjust it down based on, you know, some cities might include overtime in that, right? And so you could make the case, hey, I think the overtime shouldn't be included, we should adjust that down. And our side might make the case, no, when you're looking at the effective rate, hourly rate, that would make sense. But you're looking at what the salary is, the earning potential, then that should be included, because that adds into pensionable money and other things that are important to capture. So I think if we're trying to, my point is, I think you're both right. And I think if we're gonna try to reach a rational set of comparables, we need to have these sort of discussions.
And I wasn't suggesting an argument for or against, or a preference for or against a particular look. I just was curious about what was in that table.
Yeah, what's in that table? It shows that there's about 23% of other compensations that you could add to firefighters to get more of a total compensation. And other cities exceed that. But
You have-
so not capturing that could show an inaccurate disparity.
If you have an employer that is short-staffed, if you are talking about total compensation in terms of what they're actually paying, a lot of that's gonna be overtime compensation. That's what I was trying to determine. But I think that the numbers you're talking about here are assimilated from the pay structure
We're not
itself.
using overtime in this table, if that's part of your
That's what I
question.
thought.
Yeah, and that's a good example though, because if it's captured as part of their salary, you know, that's, to us, that might signal a different way to look at accurately as opposed to just overtime. But you know, right now, we're in a sort of model where we're working a lot of overtime, but it's not pensionable, and we don't have those other benefits. So there's all that, if we're trying to be accurate about total compensation, are great discussions to have, I think. And so we're suggesting some, and you know, I'm sure you guys use PMF, we have our own economists, there's certain standards people use, and they can argue a little bit around the edges, but there's certain standards people use when establishing total compensation. Not a lot of variance for people that are really trying to do this rational approach. And so, for rational approaches, comparables need to be complete, consistent, current, properly modeled. Information is key. Coming up with cost living comparisons. So completeness is important, consistency, and using current values. These are all things we're kind of inviting you, and we hope to endeavor to do on our side. So step raise is a good example. And I noticed in the PMF report, their treatment of a step raise is almost as if it's an augment to cost living increases. And you know, we can argue on both sides. The argument be that it's not. And we would cite several different sources for that. 143 under salary section, they talk about longevity and seniority pay. And case law will show that on 143, well, that the step raise is a form of longevity or seniority pay. It's not a augment to cost of living. And why that's important is especially when, again, getting back to the illustration how it affects firefighters' families. Firefighters, you know, it's almost a vow of poverty to start the Austin Fire Department. And then after about 6 years, you start feeling like you're catching up. So now you got 6 years of deficit to make up. And at that same period of time occurs where you have the largest cost of living raise. And then the city is signaling that is actually, you know, okay because, you know, you got these step raises. No, that was money that they've been counting on for years to catch them up to where they needed to be to take care of their families. It's a little different. I can realize it can be argued respectively both ways, but from our perspective, it should not be included. PMF comparable cities show that the top pay is reached at about an average of 13.5 years. You get to smaller cities like Plano and Katy, and some of these really up and coming cities are paying way more initially, really for the first half or more, 3/4 of a firefighter's career. Maybe we start reaching them over 21 years. You know, it takes us 21 years to reach our top pay. You know, even the comparable cities we're using in the PMF report is about 13.5 years. So of course, you know, over the course of your career, that matters, right? I mean, total compensated for the course of your career is impacted greatly by these sort of things. We take 55% longer to reach our top pay. Now, I doubt we would say that it takes 50% longer to get our experience as Dallas or these other cities, but yet we're stretching out our top pay that far. And then consequently, we're looking at top pay as one of our main comparable brackets. You know, when these economists from the city side do the calculations, especially in 17. I think actually this year they went a little bit along the spectrum a little bit. So step pay is not, so PMF implies that the step raise exists as an offset to large CPI increases. Firefighters start low. This money's really we count on for our families. We're looking forward to the point where we get some relief. And we have this condition where we have this hot market, particularly in housing and cost of living, it's eating that up. And it has impacts, not on just the numbers, but on people's lives, on the detriments to their family. And if the city of Austin wants to claim the step raise as a cost to the city and not a cost avoidance, then we could rework our pay package and drop that 21 years down to 10 years. But I think the city would probably acknowledge, to at least a degree, it's a cost avoidance, not just a cost. And of course, this would be expensive. We're not suggesting that. We're using it as an example of trying to make our point. So another thing before we get into our proposal is, and you know, we asked you all to characterize the PMF report. I think you all decided it'd be better to do right before you do your proposal. We respect that. So we're trying to characterize ourselves without the benefit of you all characterizing it for us and helping us along. So they're using a general schedule from the government to develop local pay adjustments. That's the first time I've ever seen that used in comparables. PMF, I was at the interest arbitration in San Antonio. PMF did not use a general scale in San Antonio. They used cost of living. So 75 miles away, you know, different scales used. Why? Would be my question. You know, you do a quick search of general scales, you discover many known problems in this index. And like I said, you know, it's even recently and pretty close by, the same company uses CPI, not GS, to develop local pay adjustments. And so it raises the question, you know, why would that be? So, history of our wages. Once upon a time, we were perhaps the highest paid in Texas, but not anymore. And I know I came in 86. I really didn't get a pay raise until, you know, I got step raises and I promoted. I didn't really get a pay raise of any substance until Meet Confer started. You know, I think Meet Confer for Austin started in 1997, I think. And, you know, it seemed like, oh, I know, I was working 2 or 3 jobs. Everybody was. Firefighters were greatly underpaid. I think everybody acknowledged that. And it seems like around 2005, we started feeling like we didn't have to work a second job, right? So that was great. And we appreciated it. In fact, if you look at the scale up in the early 2000s, the city really helped firefighters a lot, especially under Toby Futrell. I think you mentioned some of that in some of the history you talked about. And then we got to the point where you didn't work a second job, you felt some relief, but before that, it was pretty rough, you know. So I'm not going to play these videos, but you kind of reaffirmed the sort of commitment that the city's made multiple times to keep Austin firefighters and public safety in general at the high end of the highest paid in Texas. In fact, you make a comment here that we're going to keep not just the highest, but most favored status 5% higher. And I think you meant it. I think you absolutely meant it. I think the city absolutely meant it. It's just that when you look at the history, we were already getting to the point where that wasn't true. If we did our comparables, what I would call a more rational approach. And so, kind of the premises of 2017, and why we're talking about 2017, this is when we feel like the base year, when we started losing purchasing power and our wages, what's happened in the environment. and the raise aren't wages started causing this detriment to our families. So some of the premises keep at 5% above Texas cities. Of course, that index had some, what we call, flaws. And that's why we kind of went to something else, which was to strive to increase firefighters' base wages significantly to approximate increase in cost of living during the same period of time. This was the wording we proposed, which kind of was the bridge between the indexing and where we ended up, which was 6.25% over 5 years. And I think no less than 8 or 10 times I said during this is that what's more important than the numbers is the philosophy of this. And this was a proposal we made that the city accepted with no edits, but this was discussed over and over and over, this philosophy during 2017 bargaining session. And it was great. I bet Sylvia would agree with me. So I was reviewing this tape from in front of council, and you were there, and so was Tom Strickland. I hadn't thought about Tom in a while. I know he was very special to your side of the table, and to you particularly, and he was to us too. People who don't know Tom, he died during this period of the contract, and he was a labor attorney for CLEAT for a long time. I'm sure you did some things with Tom Strickland over the years, and he worked for the city, and he was making the statement, not once but twice, that's been a long-standing past practice to keep public safety employees at the top of the market. And then this slide was really interesting. It was really great. He was talking about, he had the whole history some of the history I went over were from 1997, things started getting better for firefighters. And then what he said was in this one, now this is in 2017, he said this 13 to 16 contract was the most fiscally conservative contract in the recent history of public safety. You're looking at 1s and 2s, 1.5s across the spectrum. Well, it went down further in the 17 contract, went to 0.5s, 2.5s, 1s, 6.25 over 5 years. So we already started putting the brakes on. And if you look at other city comparable, that they were going higher than these levels. And then they continue to go higher than these levels during the 17 contract. And I think the city in good faith does want to keep firefighters at the top of the pay scale. We appreciate that. But because of various conditions in economics and we've tried to do, bending down the line on general fund, which is laudable. The problem is, it does have effects on firefighters' lives. Maybe not so much this contract, but it really started showing up the next contract. It was indisputable when you start looking at our surveys and talking to firefighters. So we're clearly not the highest paid anymore in Texas, not even 5%. When you use rational approach to comparables and take in all factors. This is a net pay comparison. This is not adjusted for COLAs. This is, I didn't get the answer for you on this, Sarah, although I tried to. I haven't gotten this answer yet. I believe net pay is, I'm going to take it for what I believe it is, which is net pay, which is arguably a good indicator of purchasing power because it's what you're actually receiving in your paycheck every time. And so there are more accurate adjustments with the one I have right now, but it does tell a picture that's interesting. So you look at what's actually in your pay. In the line that Austin's kind of a darker, thicker line, when you're looking at what you're actually dollars you're receiving you can spend, right? We are not the highest paid. These are all Texas comparables. And so once we have more information on that, we'll provide it, but I think this is a good illustration of the differences, different ways to look at compensation to make comparable. And of course, this was adjusted for cost of living. We know from the research we've done that this black line would go down even further. So Plano, Texas is not an ESD. Plano, Texas has a starting salary of $74,000. It would take Austin firefighters 9 years to reach that level. But by the time they reach that level, they've already got another raise. They're topping out at 2 years. Their firefighter skills. So it doesn't take them 21 years to get to 89,000, 90,000. It gets them 2 years. Where our firefighters barely exceed the 89,000 after 21 years. And so if you're a new firefighter and you're looking for a place to live, to work, it used to be, man, Austin Fire Department was the stuff, I mean, all across the nation. This is in Texas. Where would you go? Where would you make the best income for your career? And as it turns out, we're not even the highest paid in Travis County. So C-Bar uses their pay scale with the red, it's hard to see, it's a small left side to y'all. In red, they show the Austin pay scale to demonstrate that in every level of the pay scale, they're making more than Austin. Again, we're only talking about base pay here. We're not talking about total compensation rights. I want to be fair. Lake Travis is a new pay scale, same thing, along the spectrum of the pay scale. Every rank, almost every level, they're exceeding our pay. And that's a good thing in a way. They've benchmarked off us for years. It's all ESD done, and they are achieving parity and exceeding parity in many cases. So it speaks to the economic environment we're in Austin, even among the fire community. In Hutto, I wish I spent more time and got a better thing than this. This is the end of their pay scale someone snapped a picture of. And so the top is firefighters all the way through lieutenant, driver, lieutenant, battalion chief, district chief. I don't think they have a cabinet. They're higher than every one of our levels and every part of this pay scale. And I'm not sure what happens to the other part of the pay scale. I don't have a copy of it. I believe it's also higher too. So this is the actual proposal we made, the time we made it, after we gave the presentation on index and moved over this philosophy. And like I said, this philosophy was not hidden. It was discussed numerous times in 2017. This wording was put across the table, and I think what I said actually, I can play the video if you want me to. What I said is that we can look back like gentlemen and see how we did and determine what pay should be. No edits, no dispute. And I bet you I talked about this philosophy 15 times. It's not the numbers, it's the philosophy that's important. But I think it's important to know, and I think that's really the theme we're talking about here. Firefighters not looking at pay raises above purchasing power, above what the loss they've incurred. And we're not looking for that in the future either. You'll see that in our proposal. We're looking at maintaining what we have, not increasing what we have over a particular index. We think that's a very reasonable position. So this is what the increases were in 17. That compounded with the year contract before that was also characterized the most fiscally conservative. On one of the first EMS negotiations, Devin, I think you characterized this as the most fiscally conservative contract that's ever been negotiated with public safety. And it is. But it has turned out because of not just the costing, but the economic conditions that none of us could foresee. It turned out to be a great detriment to the families of our firefighters. You've seen this before, you see it again. So here's our wage proposal. First year, we recommend an increase of 13.75 to current wages. And I think it's important to notice that this is a 6-year window we're looking at. We're not looking at a pay raise in 1 year, although that's what it ends up being practically. We're looking at a look back at the 5 years where purchasing power was lost. And we think it's a reasonable position, especially given the philosophy and wording from the last contract, to expect to look back like we discussed and see what the increase or decrease in purchasing power and make adjustments. And we're not saying it isn't a high number, it is a high number. We think it's justified for all the reasons we spoke about. Future, I think, well, you remember, we never said we were against indexing. We wanted to look at how to do it, in a way that maybe has better assumptions. And so what we're looking at is using the CPIW South region. The city budget office can look at that index number April of each year. And I'm not saying it's exactly like city employees, but somewhat like city employees. The budget office will look at what's going on in a particular year and then budget for it. So if the city was in a particularly bad, negative CPI period, they could, it would be a lower number. If it was a high CPI period, it'd be a higher number. But they can look in April and kind of start budgeting. And a lot of these elements we have are the elements of any sort of indexing system. We start researching. You have an index you use. You have a date that you use to establish what that index is. You usually have a number to an escalator on it. Usually that's to account for a variety of things. I'd say it accounts for regional differences. If we're looking at the South region, Austin is arguably the hottest city in the South region. So rather than trying to, redo the basket of goods for all these cities, we just need to agree on an escalator. And then a corridor, so the city has some, assurances, and the firefighters do what the lowest number would be and the highest number would be. And of course, all these are numbers that I imagine we will have some discussion on. But the main thing is we're looking at an indexing system moving forward. Again, we think it's reasonable because we're not asking for increases in base pay or total compensation. We're looking more at maintaining what we have. We feel like that's been eroded. Designed to maintain purchasing power, not just increase baseline, and all the things I just talked about. And so, moving on to wage compression, here's another flyer from McKinney, Texas. So our Austin firefighters are starting at 40,000, and they're starting at 66. My question is, where do you go if you're a firefighter? I know where I'd go. So how are we going to get the talent that we've really been blessed to get over decades in Austin when this is a changing environment we're in now? So this was the same thing from our conceptual proposal. It's really compressing 3 down to, we said base year, but really probably should be going down all the way down to cadet. Again, you're looking at McKinney starting at 66,000, right? Maybe we need to extend this down to, although we don't have in our proposal we're going to send over today, we really should probably be thinking about as 2 parties meeting together, deciding how to strategize on how to make sure we can continue to maintain and draw some of the best talent, not just in the state of Texas, but the nation. Probably lowering down our beginning cadet salary to this level. Assignment pays have not increased in 18 years, so it's kind of the same theme: detriment to families, decrease in purchasing power. We want to increase that to $300 a month. We have a seniority scale that you'll see that continues to maintain purchasing power and seniority scale over time. Adding dispatch, arson, and wildfire to the assignment pay. Of course, wildfire is a declaration of existing right for when hopefully we'll settle in one of the grievances we had. We talked about the situation last time, Wall, where the wildfire division was created with an existing battalion. They put stipulations on that there'd be a 2-year limit that had to stay in the battalion. That added extra working conditions. It did not add assignment pay. And we felt that was a major change in working condition. We're not trying to settle all of those things. We're just trying to settle the assignment pay with this. Staff pay, we feel like, and others in the command staff feel that they should have always been included in this, the president, the AFA, and assistant chiefs, but they have not. We're clearly working a 40-hour work week. We're clearly in that position, and it's been excluded. And so we're asking that be remedied. We have a grievance on this also, and we're asking for 5 years back pay for those who held those positions and not received the staff schedule payment. And other types of longevity pay, we'd like to see that increase. We didn't do the math, but we're thinking that's pretty close to what a increase in purchasing power would be. EMS does, even if you're not a paramedic, they give credit for advanced certifications, UTI, advanced and paramedic. We feel that our folks add a lot of value, and I think as we get more and more paramedics, we need to recognize that and continue to incentivize them to maintain their certifications. And we want firefighters, we look through the list of, Texas comparable cities in the PMF report. They show cities that have, received both educational and certification pay. I don't think it's the majority, but it's a significant number, so we'd like to have managed to consider that also. And then, a very important piece of this all, I think we alluded to this, to a large degree with a conceptual proposal nearly a month ago now, is, pension reform. And I'm gonna tell the story again, because I think it's an important story to tell. So I became president, our pension system, infinite years underfunded. And, the city and the police system were in much better shape. They weren't in like the best shape in the state of Texas, but they're in much better shape. So we came out of the, the near bank defaults, 2008, 2009, very poorly. And when I first became president, I always remember this, a former trustee came to me and said, you need to let the system go broke. It's the city's liability. They have to fix it. Let it go broke. Never negotiate for pension. And I told him right then, I said, I will always negotiate for pension to get this fixed. Our most important asset. It's responsible to let it go broke. We need to fix it. And so we did. And I'm very proud of that. I think the city should be proud of it too, because not only should we be proud of it emotionally, but it saved them millions of dollars in not having bond ratings go down quicker than they have, and not having to show our liability on the books because some of the accounting changes occurred around that same time. And so we moved from an infinite years underfunded to one or two top healthy systems in the state of Texas. And we did that by increasing our employee contributions by 3% and the city contribution by 4%. But some of those are wage concessions that we made early on to make sure that happened. And the result is we have a sustained benefit. The city we've taken off their liabilities, but even though it's our system, it's the city's liability. I knew that then, I know that now. And I think we were very good organizational citizens and stewards of that concept at the time. And I think that's worth something, should be acknowledged. So we talked about the spread before, but right now, if you look at the City of Austin pension versus the fire pension versus the police pension, and I think I figured these numbers off post-reform. I don't think the employee contribution changed yet. But anyway, there's about 11% spread between the added FICA and all the different pension contribution amounts. It's about 11% spread between what the city employees pay and what the City of Austin pays. The police is a much larger spread because of the recent infusion of cash into their system, which would have happened to us too if we had let our system go broke. I think the city infused about $134 million in present value money, which turns out to be about $180 million in future value. And you can aggregate that according to the folks, Hanson at the City of Austin pension system. In terms of aggregated, city contribution number about 39.8% over the 20-year period when they were advertising that money. So they got this huge gap, between in our spread between what we're paying, what the city's paying is pretty low. It's about 3.5%. That's 3.35%. And so, this is a big ask on our part, and I think it's the right thing to do for the city. We did the right thing. Nobody made us. We made sure it came off the city's liability side. We have lowered our paychecks to do that. And the city, conversely, is about to make huge investments into the pension system. They already have with the police. We would like some consideration for that. We think we owed some consideration for that. We think the right thing to do is for the city to do something about that. And this is from the PMF report that shows pension contribution to the comparable cities. Texas, Austin is certainly high in the scale of the employee contributions. And so this is what we're asking. We're asking for a buy down for the firefighters from 18.7 to 16%. This brings the spread, and then we're asking the city to raise their contributions from 22.05 to 27.05. And this brings the spread more in line with, shares the responsibility more in line with the spread is what I'm calling it between the city and the police spread is. We think it's the right thing to do and look forward to having those conversations with you all at the table. How we do that is there's some existing language in our statute that allows this. And it was actually exercised in the contract that ended in 2003. And I think it was a 5-year contract, so I think it started in maybe 98. What happened in that contract was the city agreed to buy down the firefighters 2% and increase their contribution 2%. And after that contract expired, not the impasse, after that contract expired, the city took that away from the firefighters. And I'm not saying that's what sent us into a death spiral, but probably didn't help. Okay. And so we want to make sure that this would be one of the few things that's in the contract that remains in perpetuity. So it's kind of like almost it's a long-term evergreen sort of thing, right? So it's a buy down to 2% and raising the or 2.7% for the firefighters, and then raising contribution to 27.05 for the, which still puts us lower than when you include FICA and contributions of other cities, of other systems in the city. So that's our proposal. I think I've included everything in there that's substantive. Of course, look through it when I send it to you and see if there's something that I missed. But I believe I've got everything included. And I stand for questions.
All right, we appreciate the presentation. Take us on, go through it, slide it.
What is the plan for us today? Because I remember I tried to change this date. I got some things I have to do later. And so I'm trying to plan the day. If I have to stay, I will, because this is the most important thing in my life. But if there's ways to do this differently, that'd be super beneficial for me personally. So I'm just kind of laying that on the table. What were your plans for today?
You want to caucus about it?
Yeah, let's caucus about that.
Give us 5 minutes.
Okay. And I hate to, I'm just being honest with you, it's a personal thing. It'd be helpful to me, but if there's any way to work around it, it'd be
Yeah.
great.
Let's
This is the
let us-
most important thing. So
Let us catch up with it, we'll be back shortly.
thank you. I'll send that stuff over to you directly.
Thank you. Good. So thank you for your patience. We kind of revisited our order of proceeding today and what we have going on. So what we would like to do is we'll break now for lunch. We have been working for a couple of weeks on our own pay proposal review, which is ready to go. And we're just gonna take one last look at it.
Okay.
Obviously, it will not be based on responding to and evaluating and costing and so forth, what you put on the table. We just, I guess coincidentally, as we have both worked as quickly as we could, we end up on the same day with your proposal and then ours. But it's only fair to put it out there so that you see where we are. And then depending on what your schedule is, we can decide what we do with the other discussions later in the day. There are a number of articles that we have. We can probably just send them to you. Some of them, it would be best we talk about them in advance. And so we're gonna suggest that we get back together at 12:45. We'll lay out what we have on the pay proposal, and then we can determine the rest of the day based on your considerations.
Yeah, that sounds good. We had our pay proposal ready for some time. We just had intelligence. You were putting yours out today, so that's what we dropped ours.
Good.
Yeah,
Whatever your course of decision is, it's fine with me.
Yeah, and if you believe that, then that's awesome. But, no, that sounds good. No, I appreciate that. So you're gonna break for lunch soon and maybe get back in an hour, is that what you're thinking?
12:45 is what we're gonna do.
12:45?
If that's all right with
Okay,
y'all.
that's fine.
All right.
Yep, thank you.
We're good.
We're good?
Appreciate y'all coming back a little early after lunch. Want to go through with you, the city's initial wage proposal. We've been working on this for several weeks and we just brought it together in the last few days, as I indicated earlier. And coincidentally, it follows on with your specific wage proposal. You've gone over concepts with us before. And gave us the details and so forth in your wage package a little bit earlier. So technically, this is not in response to what you shared with us. You'll see that some of the provisions in here are responsive. We've been talking about concepts and so forth now for some time. I'll point out before we start that this is a challenging time. And we understand the needs and the aspirations and desires of your members. All of our other city employees are in the same position and maybe in a worse position with the real challenges in our economy, with the cost of living. Although it didn't go back to our study and our analysis and our tables and so forth, the most recent, cost of fuel that has a direct impact on people, especially at lower income levels. The cost of the entire market basket, that's a part of what we're talking about here, kind of a central key feature in the proposal that we all made. So those are real challenges for the entire city workforce, and we understand that your members know that as well. Simultaneously with that, of course, are the challenges to the taxpayers in this community, some of whom, may be very well to do because of the cost of living here and the compensation levels that exist in the city of Austin. Some of that's been charted in your proposal. But many of those people are working class folks that have an extremely difficult time. And meeting their tax obligations is an essential piece of the problem and the challenge that the city owes to all of its residents with its large, diverse workforce. Coupled with that, of course, are the realities of those increasing costs on the city's ability to provide essential services to everybody that lives in this diverse community. So that's part of the picture to kind of round out the comprehensive set of challenges that we have here. So let's start through with this analysis and proposal. Your proposal talked about the verbalization of what we had committed to do with public safety and with firefighters in particular the last time. And in 2017, that we verbalized the direction the bargaining team had been given. You'll remember that the discussion that I think we focused on about 5% above the next highest city was as we were waiting for our market study and analysis back at that point in time. At that point in time, in some cases, we were 20% or more higher than the next highest city that we were comparing to in our historic wage review. And the last contract marked kind of a departure that I'm not sure that you articulated. I think the record overall comprehensively shows that it was a clear change in policy direction intended to adjust the trend line for public safety and Austin firefighters in particular downward to control the compensation growth that had been outpacing all other city costs and labor costs for a number of years. And we think the contract that we finally made reflects that. So we do want to pay a little piece of this for it.
So it looks like it's playing with the sound. How did you get your sound working, Bob, when you played your clip?
Just came from the laptop.
Yeah. Go to speaker icon on your, you might be able to put it on your computer, might be trying to go over to the projector, maybe.
I think that's what it's trying to do.
Well, mine just worked, I didn't have to do that adjustment, so. You send to me, I'll drive the whole thing for you. My internet's bad, but it's not that bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean on the speaker icon? Does it show your speakers on your computer, or does it they're trying to pipe over to the projector maybe?
We could take a 10-minute break and just get it figured out, so everybody's not just sitting here and waiting on this, since you've bypassed all of the city's computer things with your own equipment. I think it's kind of confusing
Yeah.
how they do it.
Let me take a quick look at it, Becky, or?
You're more than welcome to take a quick
I'll
look
just
at
take
it.
a quick gander. If it's what I think it is, it's easy to fix. If not, I won't be able to probably help. You go to full screen, oh yeah, and go to your speaker icon down here. Oh, you got turned off.
Well, there's that could be part of
That
it.
probably was it, you know.
Let's see.
It's not that, you still need to address which speaker it's going to.
Yeah, so that's what I was looking at here. So the Realtek audio, that would be my laptop. I think Broadcom is your, is
I
that?
think so, yeah. Yeah, that should be right.
So
But it didn't look like it was actually playing up the video last time you tried it.
Well, it did in the back room, so it's connected.
okay.
Okay.
So
They're just gonna play it off the laptop?
I guess so.
Oh, did you want to try to get it over to there?
That was the
If
goal
we
so
can.
everyone could hear it.
Oh, then maybe try the other speaker. Perhaps.
Is it plugged into a
I played it off my
speaker?
computer, I just turned it up all the way and it did okay.
I do have speakers I can go get, can
Yeah.
plug in.
Sylvia.
Sylvia wants to go
Sheila?
She went to go get those portable speakers.
Good.
It worked in every other device I played it on, except.
Yeah. Ran the same thing one morning where we were having a heck of a time.
Yeah.
In the future, you can't have that X on the speaker.
Well,
I've learned that from
That's like a giveaway, huh?
You know, everything's easy once you know it, right? So, I've done the same thing.
Not quite as fond of this background as less cooler ones.
yes, so it changes every day.
Yeah.
And yesterday it was like some lavender fields, it was very
Right.
calming. I should have brought it back just for today. Outlet.
Is there a free outlet there? Oh, there. It's got an extension.
Okay. This one is in here somewhere.
Christine, okay with that speaker impeding in your space there?
I am.
Okay.
I'll allow it.
Let's see if that works.
You're aware, of course, that we have a direction of sorts from the city council, some of which is very specific and some of which is still in its formative stages in this budget process as we go forward. And that is to make adjustments in the cost and the cost trend for public safety, including the Austin Fire Department. But of course, the asterisk that goes with that is that we still intend to remain competitive and have overall compensation benefits that allow us to hire and keep the best personnel. Our position and our proposals on that will be informed by the study that I already mentioned to you that we're waiting for. And so we're continuing to review that. We got the budget cycle going on in terms of funding and funding priorities and available funds. And then we've got our comparisons that we're doing for.
That was the money shot, it was worth it. And of course, we stipulate that, Lowell, you know that, we know it was a reset.
Sorry about that.
We knew that was part of it all along.
So we have provided you with our compensation analysis. We appreciate your input, your perspective. We'll continue to look at that and talk to you about it. Wanted to give you hours, had anticipated actually doing this before we had heard from y'all, and so I don't mean to, plow old ground here. But some of these things that we do want to articulate. The city of Austin still is highly competitive with other large fire departments in Texas, as you heard from kind of the soundbite. That continues to be our target to the extent that we can achieve that with available resources. Just noting that those resources have changed since that discussion that we had earlier. And I'll allude to that later as we talk about the limits and so forth that we now face as a result of the state's involvement. Based on the benchmark analysis of the eight largest Texas cities, and we do believe that the best comparisons are the large metropolitan communities. Our study has continued historically throughout many years, I don't know how many years it goes back, looking at the same set of cities and not to revisit that or cherry pick sources of labor costs and so forth. We rank first at multiple career junctions for firefighters, as well as at the pay range maximum for the lead and supervisory ranks. Adjusting for regional pay differences, we still retain our strong relative position at the top of the comparison group ratings. Pay premiums are also competitive with other Texas jurisdictions. And I would just note that because of that, your own family has continued to be in this fire department, and to see this as presumably the most viable career option going forward, and not to run off the Plano. I just happened to notice
It's
this.
a love of public service.
Since the onset of the most recent firefighters agreement across the board increases, have trailed changes in consumer prices, but when you look at the step increases, which just are a part of what people take home, our compensation tracks or exceeds changes in consumer price indexes since 2017. And so we think the data support that. Evaluating compensation, as you know, PFM survey contracts at each jurisdiction, collectively reviewed key documents. All the compensation comparisons in these slides that follow are effective 9/30/22, final day of the agreement with these exceptions. El Paso expired on that date. Houston pay comparisons had 2-6% across the board wage increases. I think you probably have all that same data. I know you're in touch with them and know where they are. Cash comparison compensations or comparisons are straight time, hourly based pay only. 6 departments built overtime in, that's not included. We think we get properly adjusted for those departments that have overtime built into their schedules. The study, even though we have not done a total compensation comparison like you talked to in your earlier presentation, we disclose and show the additional pay premiums separately so that everybody can see and is transparent. And of course, you already know that Houston has an early fiscal year in, and I don't think that that skews the data at all. Houston, of course, has been kind of in a freeze position for a part of the time period since we made our last labor agreement. Next slide. So we still have the highest base wage of surveyed cities in the state of Texas, regionally adjusted, including the 8 largest. Regionally adjusted, which I'm sure you understand, number one, cost of living is one factor. But cost of living, of course, deals with goods and services, as you see there in the third bullet. There are a lot of other aspects to the local workforce. Housing is certainly a dynamic here, but housing costs and other market basket costs affect everybody much differently depending on where you are in your career. On the one hand, for a new person coming to the city of Austin to sign up and try to get a job in this fire department, it's a huge challenge today. On the other hand, for firefighters that have been here for a decade or two, they've enjoyed the advantage of a huge growth in their asset that they bought and raised their family in, and have another retirement asset that's probably worth more money than it would have been in any other city in the state. And so all of those economic impacts vary from place to place. And somebody that's retired in the last few years in Austin or looks to in the next couple of years after having a career here is going to be able to go somewhere else with a lot of money in the bank as a result of their investment in their home. It's been a great place to live for the people that have been able to be here and to afford it. And so all of those factors are difficult to analyze. Bottom line is the consumer price index and so forth are factors that we have to look at. Those determinants are related, but they're not the same. Multi-location employers that pay geographic differentials use this data to make those local adjustments. So that if I've got plants in Phoenix, Arizona, and one in Austin, and one in Florida, and one in Oklahoma City, then that's the way I adjust my labor costs. PFM, I think, is using established methodology from the federal government to make these reasonable adjustments. So we think that they're valid and reliable. The comparison that we see in the city's PFM study that of course you're familiar with, same cities we've been using all along. San Antonio that you mentioned, that was apparently having some hiring difficulties in the most recent cycle, you related that to us. And Austin is above San Antonio, I believe, in almost every one of those categories. When you look across the board with these comparisons, you see that Austin is number 1 out of 8 in all but one of the categories, and that, of course, is the first starting salary out of post-probation. And so we think we're positioned quite well in the market. We note that historically, as we have compared the maximum pay for the career position, still at 21.7% variance from the second highest payer. I believe historically that may have been compared to number 1, but this is the current data, and we think that that positions us to be competitive in the market in our hiring. I think that's the next slide.
Is this just base hourly wage, or is there any
That's
adjustments
correct.
made?
That's what-
Nothing else, no other compensations?
That's correct. And all those others are there, and we separately, the study separately compares the additional pays and shows whether or not we're competitive in those specific pays at page 32 and 33. The total wage increases, base wages plus step increases, have kept pace with the market for the most part, and we'll see that in the next slide, but I'm not ready for that one yet. So CPI, the snapshot in December 2021 is compared here. There are multiple indexes. You talked about the several different CPI indexes and which ones should be used. We look at several of those, I think including yours. And of course, we already know the realities of the housing change in the city of Austin.
And, well, I'm sorry, I promise I didn't interrupt much, but when you say regionally adjusted, you're using the BLS GS scale.
I'd have to look in the study to see what the
I think
accurate.
Yeah, it's the GS
Accurate.
scale.
But this next slide here on the consumer price indexes, we have the CPIU, the urban south, and W, which I think is the one that you referred to. I can't remember from your presentation, and I believe the CPIW is the one that's actually a part of the charter amendment. We do believe that the wage increases, you see there, the first two bar graph slides show the 6.5%, I believe, base wage change during the term of the contract, but also shows the actual realized changes in total compensation as a result of steps, with 17.3% in one instance and 11.7% in the other instance. Because that's real wage growth for the firefighters that achieve those steps. Next slide. This is some more discussion of the comparisons. We don't believe that net wages is a fair and accurate and realistic comparable. It's not certainly been a part of our historical look in the city of Austin. It may have some advantages in terms of showing things. It's been my experience that it's not the norm that's typically utilized either in the DOL comparisons or in the kinds of wage controversies. I think you talked about Oklahoma and resolution and arbitration of labor agreements and so forth. I'd be surprised if the net wage model is one that's been used, because I think that what's been used by PFM here is very similar to the historic nationwide norm for people that are resolving their pay and benefit disputes in interest arbitration. We don't believe that ESDs are appropriate comparisons. Once again, they haven't been historically used here. They have a different taxing base. They don't have to provide police and fire and EMS and parks and libraries and streets and all of other kinds of things. They're single purpose entities that get to devote all of their funding to the public safety functions that they were specially selected to augment. And we just know that the charter amendment talks about city comparisons, which we think excludes ESDs and makes them a bad example. And I will note that, I think everybody knows that Plano is probably the #1 comparable in the state of Texas, has been for many years. That's a choice that they made. And it's a choice that, frankly, as a suburban community, very wealthy suburban community in the Dallas area, they apparently decided they need to pay those rates in order to hire people from the other large metropolitan communities in North Texas. And that's been the case for a long time. And it was the case in 2017 when we entered into the most recent agreement that the members approved. This is just a recounting of the applicants and recruitment analysis. We're not seeing a meaningful fall off in interest in this department. We do believe that as times change and they get worse and then they get better, that working in the Austin Fire Department is going to be a professional career that will be highly attractive to individuals. We will continue to attract and hire and retain the best people that are interested in that career. So that's our proposal package and our overview. We are proposing to you a first year 0.25% increment, a second year 0.50 increment, 1% in years 3 and 4. We do want to have a 4-year labor agreement, and we'll continue to have discussions with you to try to achieve that long-term contract. We think it's served us well for a long time, and we understand that it's never easy. We are willing on assignment pays to add $50 a month to the two listed there. They are for the special ops. We're open to continued discussions in other areas that have assignment pays that you believe we should consider and make some changes for. We want to increase on-call to $5 an hour from the current $2 an hour. We're willing to make permanent the vacation sick leave buyback as a permanent from the current pilot program model. At this point, we are not interested in your double time proposal. We don't believe that staff dynamics have made that necessary. We're not having a problem filling those shifts. We are not agreeing to changes in APL. We think it's sufficiently funded. I think that you probably know, I can't remember if we've officially indicated that we're opposed to the insurance trust language, but we do agree to provide that data that's available and be able to, and I think we have a proposal on that and we'll probably send to you. We are not accepting the additional leave provisions that you have put on the table. We are continuing to look at the alternative leave question. We have some, aside from the funding issues, we have some legal compliance questions about that leave provision. And we do reject the proposed shift change to 48 hours because of the cost and the operational implications. We don't think that it is operationally an improvement or an advantage to the city. We think that it would have an unaffordable cost, especially in the obvious context of the challenges we have in making a deal here that's affordable. We still have a number of important issues on the table. We kind of pushed aside hiring and promotion that we were going to give you this morning, which are basically ready to go. Those are still on the table and still important to us. And all of those are kind of a part of the overall package, and we would like to see them together here. But we wanted to respond by putting our initial pay proposal alongside your initial pay proposal so we can continue with constructive discussions. I'll leave it open to you either now or after you all caucus about how you want to go forward on these other articles that we have. You listed a number of them on your overview on our status report as we started today. We can talk about hiring and promotions, or on some of these articles, we can just send them to you, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, unless there's something real novel on hiring and promotions, I think you can send them over, that's fine.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we send over, are we close on 19 as well?
We've got at least 4 or 5.
Close on 19, I think 18 and 22 could also be sent over.
Okay, so let us work on it and we'll send it to you between now and the next meeting, then we can walk through it.
And you actually have an actual pay proposal, correct? You're gonna send over.
You mean the article?
We don't have an article written up for the pay proposal, but it will reflect the terms that you just said.
Okay, so let me ask a couple questions. And so on step compression, what will the proposal reflect?
It will not reflect any step
Okay.
compression.
Okay,
And that's
so,
not something that we have looked at, as far as I know, up until this point in time.
okay.
I
So,
don't think it was a surprise that you were gonna propose that, but it's not something that we have looked at yet.
yeah, I have a quick statement to make then. So, in a period of the highest cost of living conditions in one of the hottest environments in the nation, you're offering us a 4% raise year one. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good enough. We'll see y'all later. Thank you.
All right.